for Chapter 8 today. This is a pretty straightforward chapter. I did make a small mistake in my menuing, that this would already be equipped, and this would have been on Tifa. Cloud will always have Synergy unless you are doing a variation of Airbuster that does not use Synergy. Lightning, which honestly I can't suggest not using Synergy Lightning on Cloud in that fight. There's a few fights where Synergy you could probably make is not a make-or-breaker. There's a couple of different ways to go through some of the fights. I'll probably try and create some older variations, so there are some more routing options for newer runners. But Synergy Lightning on Airbuster saves so much time, as long as you do the Thundera True Strike version. Cloud will never get stunned. So, unless you're having issues with focus striking through Tank Buster, and if you're really having issues with that, just parry through the Tank Buster. Wait it out. But it still saves time. It's just very... It's just so much weight. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to go through the menuing real quick. This is a make or break moment, where a lot of things change, and we switch off from Magic Cloud. There's a couple of different ways to go about this. You can keep Cloud as a secondary caster, and deal with his damage being lower. You can go into Hard Edge and make him a physical character, put Goddard Dummerung on him. Most of the time you can activate Berserk manually. I am not a fan of this route. I feel like Hard Edge is really good late game. Here, Cloud is better as a accessory to the crime of Aerith, if you understand what I mean. We're going to be abusing self-destruct here. So what we're going to do first is take Synergy off. You can have anything in here. I just have these slots empty because my Mithril Blade is going to be overwritten by using equipment from both Twin Stinger and Nailbat later to completely rewrite the materia setup in here so that I can seamlessly transition. You can do whatever you would like depending on what route you're following. I initially started, changing things through the menu and found that to be very cumbersome. So the way that I do things now is, as you can tell, Cloud's weapons all have a bunch of different setups. This is what I call a pre-setup weapon. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take stuff out of Mithril Blade, and then I'm going to switch over to Twin Stinger and then Nailbat as needed to clean up and tweak my materia. So we're going to take Synergy off, give that to Aerith. We're going to snatch First Strike from Tifa because she's not going to need it for a while. And we're going to swap out her Refocus for HP up. Note that we have Tifa or Aerith on Refocused staff, not Mithril. There's a particular reason for that, because we're actually going to remove this. We've been using this to steal stuff off of up till now. So we're going to get rid of both these refocuses that really won't see much use. This Ice and Fire could be used, but I find it better to remove them now. We're also going to take MP Absorb off Cloud and loop that back into the regular pool. So Barrett now has that MP Absorb again. He'll hold on to that until we grab it later after this. So now we're going to put Cloud onto Iron Blade. We want to make sure most of the time with Cloud, you want to go no, 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 no. You are not overwriting his weapon if you're following my route. You're going, nope, I want what's on that weapon because that's set up properly. You will have to farm a lot more leveled up materia for specific things. But it will make your menuing a lot easier in the long run, to the point where you're only toggling materia every once in a while. Like ice to lightning, ice to fire, lightning to wind, wind to lightning, because these two are right next to each other, so you can get really quick toggles. The only other time is you're going to be going to Steadfast Block towards the end of the game, maybe an HP up or two, MP up, very specific stuff like that. For the most part, you won't need to be swapping materia. So we're going to put Iron Blade on. We're going to actually take Chain Bangle off, and that is going to stay off the entire game of him. You don't have to leave him with Chain Bangle at the beginning, but I find that it does increase his survivability, because in the beginning, it's very hard to fit in an HP up unless you're willing to spend more time grabbing Mako recovery crates. So I go with MP up or MP absorb, usually. We keep the chain bangle for a little bit of extra safety, because Cloud can very easily be overwhelmed early on. You don't have to do that. You can just stick with Force Bracelet, but we're going to take that off because we're going to abuse Self-Destruct with him from now on. Well, not from now on, but from here to the rest of the game, we're going to be bouncing back and forth between him casting and abusing Self-Destruct. Self-Destruct requires low defense, low max HP, has positive MP gain. It's got a lot of things that I will cover later, but we're going to try and just go through things right now. We're going to switch her over to Metal Knuckle. You can stay on Feathered Gloves. I would switch to Metal Knuckle at this point. Your Metal Knuckle can be just about anything. We're also going to switch Aerith over to Mithril Rod. Just so you know what my setup is with Lightning, Fire, Healing. So there you go. This is what Aerith starts as now. This is what Tifa's on. This is why I stole the materia off of her weapon, because she's not going to be using Feather Gloves anymore. Barret, just in case you wanted to know. And the very specific setup for Iron Blade. Warding, Subversion, HP Absorb, Enemy Skill, Elemental Ice. ATB Boost, First Strike, Magic. Magic is a holdover from the previous chapter. So we're going to go into Disorder. We're going to go into Blade Burst, since we're on a more magic-reliant build. So that does more damage, Self-Destruct, and Triple Slash. So you can go through this fight just about any way, but I find Triple Slash will give us a pretty decent start here. Do a regular combo till you slam the floor and then hold for the finisher. I dodge roll as a quirk. It's not necessarily the best way to deal with that. So you want to target the elite here, slam the floor and spin again. ATB boost as soon as you do. You can kind of do whatever you want once that ATB boost comes out. Now that Rude is on the floor, we're going to explode on him, quite literally. You could do this with Fire Elemental or Wind Elemental. I find that Ice Elemental is the best to set up on Iron Blade, because it just... most enemies are either neutral to it, or weak to it. There is, to some level, an issue where it's just not super effective, but I find that it is effective enough to get you through what you're looking for. So we're just going to Cross Slash, and you're probably like, what gave us Cross Slash? You know what, never mind, I'm okay with this. I'll talk about that while we're up on the rooftop, and then we're going to make a small menu here. Take the Fire and Healing, and then we're going to change this Fire out for Assist, and then we're going to change out this additional Fire for Magnify on Barret. So, the MP Absorb is just kind of floating there until we need it later. Yeah, I did not pick up that prayer materia. I have not bothered picking up any prayer or chakra materia because it is useless, and you can't get rid of chakra. You can get rid of prayer, if I remember correctly, for whatever reason, but prayer doesn't respawn, so it's kind of weird. I am going to heal here. You could put Skill Master on Cloud, ATB Stagger, or something like that. You cannot put HP up on Cloud, though. So the heal materia, I find, is a better option. So if something weird happens, you can heal back up. If you miss with your Self-Destruct, you can re-heal yourself. So this little cutscene right here, the easiest way to get through this is to kind of change the camera angle. But right here, I'm actually going to make sure to not change the camera angle on purpose. Your movement is relative to the camera, so keep that in mind. If you start messing around with your camera, you're going to get funky movement. I don't know who decided that, but just hold right here. You kind of see how I'm holding, and there you go. You can get some movement during that cutscene, save a little bit of time. Now you can go back to changing Cloud's angle with the camera. So you could just do kind of like this, and then he moves for you. This is kind of the problem with these handlebars, is they're pretty fidgety, and they do this all the time. Thank you. Don't know what to tell you. Sometimes you move flawlessly, you just... it looks like you know exactly what you're doing. Then other times it looks like your hands have rebelled and the game has decided not to. But you can see kind of on the input viewer that the game kind of does whatever the heck it wants. So we're just going to climb up the ladder here. Hey, Okamura. Just going to make a couple of tutorials and then probably pull a stream later today. See how the viewer base is. Thank you. So right here, we don't really have much going on. We just kind of walk around on the roof. So I'm going to talk about the strats and the techniques and stuff we're going to use. I could fast forward and kind of cut to in town, but this will give me plenty of time to talk about several different things. There's a lot of different little things. If you want to skip forward and have already heard it, then go ahead. There's not very much to... Not very much in movement tech here. It's just a matter of point A to point B. Avoid encounters as much as needed. Apex. I think been live for about an hour. I had to do did chapter 15 already.
Of course you do.
Imagine having a bot. I wouldn't know what that feels like. So Ironblade.
Dunno.
Aerith is going to handle our damage, so I gave both of the magic ups to her. If you really want to, you can skip it. I'll have it uploaded to YouTube later if you really want to know. This game has a lot of skips and glitches. Chapter 15 is the easiest one and the one I know the best. So, I just decided to make a video so people can learn it. A lot of the glitch resources have been removed due to the glitch hunters not being happy with the way the Discord was handling things. So we're trying to remake those as the runners as ourselves so that everybody can learn the any percent category easily. But anyway, Chapter 8 is kind of a watershed moment. We're going to switch over to letting Aerith cast for the most part. I did used to split magic ups between the two of them because her magic was high enough, but because of the introduction of Synergy with the PC and PS5 version, or Intergrade, as most of you may know, her magic has become even more important because it turns a tier 1 free spell into a auto kill in a lot of enemies. So giving her the magic ups is a lot more beneficial than splitting them. It used to be that you could get consistent level 1 and near level 2 limits with a magic up and a lower defense. The self-destruct itself will inflict self-damage if you have warding and subversion on. That's because self-destruct normally inflicts instant death. But if you use warding subversion, you ward instant death, so you no longer can be affected by it, as long as your warding is level 3, that is. And what that will allow you to do is create self-damage rather than instant death. This does quite a few things all at once. It makes it so you do a lot of self-damage so that you build a bunch of limit through the in-game damage system. With low enough HP, you end up taking multiplicative. The game, obviously, I think, wants to calculate against your HP, so it's based on a percentage of HP lost. So the lower your HP, when you lose 10k HP, it ends up being 200-ish%, you know. Obviously, I'm very much generalizing here, but that's 2 deaths versus 1, so you almost always get a limit out of it, or very close to. You won't consistently get a limit unless you have a very high damage roll or a self-crit. But with this setup, with Force Bracelet instead of Chain Bangle, the lower defense is also very important. Fury Ring, which will increase your damage taken by 30%, which is also a stealth bonus. Warding Subversion on, which blocks instant death. Iron Blade, which has high enough magic stat. And Reprieve, which is another important part. Oh, thank you for the fire to the bum. This is actually why I have healing, because of stuff like that. You can't use HP up, though. You need to have the lowered HP, because like I said, self-destruct gives you limit back based on percentage of HP loss. So the lower your HP, the more limit you're going to get per damage taken. So self-destruct is way more effective at lowest magic defense, lowest HP value, and highest damage taken. So you can increase your self-damage by magic up, but Fury Ring is going to do most of the work because Fury inflicts Berserk, which gives you a 30% damage outward buff, but it also gives you a 30% damage taken increase buff. That cutscene right there is the only cutscene in the game that you will skip by holding triangle, because you cannot skip until the camera angle changes, so holding triangle as soon as that cutscene starts will skip that one early. You can also add in elemental magic. I find Ice Elemental to work the best. If you need to, feel free to swap the element on your Iron Blade as needed. Like, Wind Elemental can be a good start here because you're going to go into Rude eventually, and he is weak to Wind. You can also start with Fire Elemental for the Roof Reno fight, and that can be very useful too. But I find Ice will drag you most of the game, but that's up to you if you want to juggle elements for this. There's no reason not to until you get more used to the game. I do not. So, Self-Destruct is ridiculously powerful because of all that stuff. Normally, you could spam this quite... As long as you have 2 ATB, you can spam this quite a lot to get a limit. And kind of like turn some fights upside down. I'd say Sork Storm right there. Sork Storm is probably one of your best choices to start with Aerith. Actually, let me show the battle settings. So Cloud's got all this stuff right here. This is mainly because we're not going to be casting magic with him. Blade Burst is based on his magic, so it does a reasonable amount of damage. This is a good option for several of the fights to actually do a reasonable amount of damage. It's going to beat out Braver, and it has a pretty wide range of damage. Very large cone. And Aerith, this is what we're going to go with. If you're going to use Wind Magnify or Wind Elemental on Iron Blade, you could theoretically downgrade this to Aerora, but I find it's not consistent. So just go with Aeroga. The Aeroga is specifically for Rude. You really don't need it for anything else. You could use it on some flying enemies, but... So Self-Destruct can very heavily be abused with getting Cloud limits, but it often doesn't really... It's very powerful, but it's balanced out by its slowness. Because Cloud is the lead character, most of the time you need him to move from hither for, here to there, back and forth, whatever you want to say. So the problem with Self-Destruct is once you block instant death, it pops Cloud into the air, kind of like a baseball pop-up, and he goes flying pretty high. The problem with this is... kind of show you. He takes forever to get back up. So I can just do this right here, but you see how long he takes to get back. So we're going to... Nice. Game tried to kill me. So this is why I have healing, though, is because just in case you miss with Self-Destruct, you'll get your HP back. I'll show you right here. You can use it basically anywhere. You have HP Absorb, but notice how long it takes Cloud to get back up. And then it also activates Self-Destruct there, so... Normally what you want to do with that is just Thundera that guy with Aerith. Wait for him to fully stand up and then Thundera. I just wanted to show off the Self-Destruct right there, just to kind of show you how slow it is. It is a very powerful tool, but it's offset by how long it takes you to get back into the speed run and back into the movement. Don't be afraid to use it, though, if you know you're up against an enemy with a large HP pool. If you use it against enemies with a small HP pool, you're going to get very little HP back. So you'll see, like, Hedgehog Pies, Rats, I do not use it on, because you end up leaving that fight with hundreds of hit points, not thousands. HP Absorb is balanced out by its targets. So you want to be careful just willy-nilly self-destructing unless you absolutely have to. It's your only option to end the fight immediately, and any other option is going to get you killed. Honestly, self-destruct will more often get you killed than save you from yourself. So keep that in mind. You really want to be careful. So there's really not too much to this segment. Just slash at stuff and roll away. Make sure you don't pick... make sure you don't bother with any of these fights except for that last Smogger. Thundera will work. Self-destruct will work. You could also synergy a few times. You could like disorder it twice or something and get Synergy Lightning off of Aerith. But for the most part, these fights, don't worry about them. So that we're just going to be walking through here. We do have a little bit of a story segment here. If this is your first time speedrunning, make sure you're taking advantage of the breaks that are here. This right here is a, I believe, nearly a minute and a half. So make sure to refill your water, get your food. You have plenty of time to heal in the next segment, so just leave your controller and dip on out. Until you get towards the back end of these speedruns, you're going to have a very long run ahead of you. But at some point, this will be closer to your first hour than it will be towards, like, hour and a half. Unfortunately, the front end has the 2 bigger breaks. This one plus the dancing minigame. And the dancing minigame will be very soon after this, so make sure you take your breaks and accordingly. Don't worry if you lose a little bit of time to just kind of, like, ignoring the, you know, not coming back too late. If you can wander into the other room as long as you can see your camera or your game from the other room and just use your controller to move forward. This is the reason I use healing, though, because if you miss with self-destruct or you have to self-destruct on something low, you can heal back up. There's kind of a hidden thing in here you may not notice with Iron Blade. Iron Blade has reprieve, so you get 1 free self-destruct per battle. But it also has trade-off. Trade-off is a nifty little ability that will reduce give you 1 MP back for every 10% of your HP lost. So self-destruct will often end up refunding you between 7 to 10 MP. Because obviously, unless you heal up, you're not going to be back at full HP, except for certain scenarios. Of note, also, if you want to make your self-destruct more consistent, you're going to need to de-level Iron Blade and make sure to not point into the 350 HP bonus on the weapon. You can use it, but it will screw with your Iron Blade strats and will make your limit gain less consistent because you are taking less percentage of HP.
I help out every now and then.
The base value of HP is what you want to be most consistent with this. So, right here it's pretty safe. I would say using this is something that will help you get used to self-destruct, so that if you do decide to end up using self-destruct strats on Whispers, it will help you out more. I do use it a lot. It's just like personal preference. I kind of like it. It's not the best, but it's what I like. At some point, you have to choose stuff that works for you. I believe Durend uses Hard Edge for most of this area, so if you're looking for Hard Edge-based stuff, that's not self-destruct, you should probably be looking at his runs to see if you can kind of cobble together a route or some strats. You can also mess around with some of the fights and see. But, yeah. So, Iron Blade is Ice Elemental. It can be anything, but I find Ice is the most efficient because it's balanced. Either neutral or it's strong against the target. Enemy skill plus HP absorb. You want to have HP absorb as high as possible so you get 40% siphon back instead of 20. That will give you a good fat recovery off of your first self-destruct and make it so you can tank some hits. That'll actually be super important when we get to the Rude fight. And then the most important part is Iron Blade's reprieve. No HP bonus. Trade-off is really nice. High magic, all that stuff. And subversion warding. Those are very important to this setup. They're part of the reason why you get a limit and why reprieve activates. Reprieve will not activate if you inflict instant death on yourself. So keep that in mind. That's why we ended up finding this in the first place, because somebody, I think, was trying to activate reprieve off of self-destruct. And found it gave them a huge chunk of limit and wasn't sure why until we tested it. But if you're on PC, there's a couple of save loads here you can do. I guess it depends on if the categories are allowed or not. Save loads are allowed. But you can save load this first dialogue. If you're just on PS5, you're going to save this okay. If save loads are banned, and the glitch couldn't tell you just yet. We had a very long discussion about it and have not reached a decision just yet, so just figured I'd put that out there. Save loads are banned, do not do this. If save loads are banned, do not do this. If they're not, don't worry about it. This saves a little bit of time. You can obviously see how much faster. PC would save load that first line of dialogue, and then it would trigger that second one when you reloaded. Then you would save load again to get this immediately. Mainly on PC, it's better because of load remover. Of note, PC loads much quicker at higher frame rates. The lower your frame rate, the longer your loads are, but load remover should help you offset that. I can only run mine at 60 while streaming, running OBS. But we're just about through all the lollygagging and story. What we have set up right now is Wind Synergy, mainly for Rude, and Lightning Magnify for everything else. The things that would stand up to Wind won't stand up to Thundera Magnify. So we have Thundera, Aeroga, and Thundera Magnify. Thundera Magnify will take care of pretty much everything we need to multi-target. Sork Storm is specifically for 2 encounters in the Kid's Hideout. The 2 encounters with the rats are very obnoxious. If you don't one-shot all the rats at the same time, you'll end up in a situation where they can and will activate Call to Arms. Also, these flowers either take the chocobo, the yellow for the chocobo, or the white for the Moogle. You can take 3 of the same one. There's no reason you have to take multiple different ones, so grab them up. And in the Kid's Hideout, the rats, if hit and not killed immediately, one shot, will activate Call to Arms. The problem is it'll summon another wave of rats, and much like the Whispers, the problem isn't that it summons more rats. The problem is that it summons rats at the speed of slow. These rats take a very long time to dig up out of the ground and be targetable. And even then, because of their positioning, you're going to want to attack them as soon as possible. And you'll very often end up in a position where the rats will call to arms several more times, wasting huge chunks of time. You have 2 choices. Either reload the fight immediately once you see call to arms, or bite the bullet and finish the fight. The choice is yours. I usually bite the bullet, but no matter what you do, you're kind of screwed. If you're on PC, I'd say save load or reset, because at least the load's removed. On the PS5, it loads pretty quick, but you're still... Just make sure you Sork Storm one of the rats. Don't Sork Storm the Hedgehog Pie, because then at least it's a 50-50. I'll show you kind of how to deal with that fight. If you really want to be cute about it, you can self-destruct, but you're going to have to heal out of it. And you're going to get very slow movement out of it, because Cloud's going to get popped up in the air like a coin, and he's going to take forever to land and get back up. So Sork Storm is the best option. I have heard Aurora Magnify does work. But I find that I don't like it that much. When it's your only option, it's your only option. I do use it later in Chapter 11, because that's just how it works out. I don't really have very many options for getting rid of all of them at once. The rats spawn in a really weird way where Sork Storm doesn't work, because they're just too far apart. Maybe if I could figure out some precise positioning. But I'll go through this segment a few times, because this chapter's very short. I just kind of wanted to gloss over everything. Self-destruct is more here for Reno, Rude. You can use it on Hell House, but I don't use that strat anymore. You can use it on Abzu 1, but I do not use that strat anymore. You can use it on Ghoul, which I still use. I actually have a modified strat to make it more consistent. So I might have to actually delete my old video, or at least link to the newer one, because I have a way to make the self-destruct consistent, because you need to take an additional hit in a lot of these fights. And you could also use it on Eligor, but I wouldn't, wouldn't as well. Magic just as king. So we're going to save here and do this area a couple of different times. So you want to just Thundera Magnify. kind of use whatever you want there. But, you can just go through this fight without really, like, paying attention. You don't need to lock onto anything. Kind of run on in there and throw out the Thunder and Magnify. If you're having issues with missing spells or whatever, just kind of, like, lock on, boop, bop. There you go. And just make sure you're not rolling here as well, so that you don't screw yourself over to the point where you get a really long put away. So the easiest way to deal with these fights, you want to make sure you're locked onto the rat, Sork Storm, and then guard. And what they'll do is they'll kind of clump up like that. It will put you in a position where you have to walk towards the bridge, but I find avoiding Call to Arms is a way bigger time save than having optimal movement here. These rats are a fluffing nightmare. And I hate it. So see right here, I made a mistake, and I almost got punished for it. You see that I Sork Stormed the Hedgehog Pie there, and I almost didn't get the other rat. And I also was very far away from Aerith, which is why the other rat was so far away from her. So if you hold guard right next to Aerith, and I'd say in your runs, make sure you take the time to target the rats, because I haven't before, and I've been punished for it. So Sork Storm, and then once you see her kind of do the pirouette and the jab to the air, then you're okay. So make sure to practice that fight until you're consistent on it. Right here, we can kind of move all we want. If you get really, really close, that second camera pan won't happen. So be careful about it, because that second camera pan is what lets you move through here. So if she says something but doesn't, the dialogue doesn't continue, you need to back up and get the camera to pan. So right here, same thing with these rats. We're going to play it really safe. Sork Storm and block. Sometimes the rats will just kind of screw you, and that's how it is. But as long as you stick next to Aerith like glue, as long as you don't get a really, really, really passive rat, like, they have to be super passive. Like, start where they spawn or run away, which is very uncommon. You should be fine. And even in that scenario, just fish out the triple slash and try. That's all you can really do at that point. So just stay still and take it. Now, you don't need to worry about healing up Aerith unless she's at, like, 1 HP going into the segment, because you'll see she's recovering hit points. That's because the Mithril Rod has Bloodsucker, so every time she kills something, she gets a nice little chunk of hit points back. You're rarely going to ever get her an HP up. So it's usually enough. We're doing pretty good. I'm gonna see if I can do some runs later on today, see how the afternoon helps out the stream during the weekdays. But I wanted to do a little bit of some tutorials, so that's about that for that fight. Kind of like notice how Cloud's the one with low hit point, or Aerith's HP is kind of low. She will get a lot of her hit points back because she's gonna be killing a lot of stuff. So right here, same thing. And sometimes she will not hit all of these guys. So I'm going to keep going until that happens. I'm actually going to try and purposefully screw up the targeting on the Magnify so that I can get it to hit only a specific one. Okay. So we're going to Magnify. As long as you Magnify the rat, you're usually pretty good. See right... Okay, so I Sork Stormed. So one of the things you can do, you see where that wind... what happened is I disordered, and that will trigger a synergy. So if one of them survives, even if you don't hit it with disorder towards the target. Another way to trigger synergy, keep it going, and then you can move back towards the thing. So, like, you could... what you can do is, I'll show you since Thunder is actually doing its job for once. One of the things you can do here is, we're not going to hit these with Thunder up. We're going to purposefully just not cast anything at all. If for some reason you miss one of these, you can just kind of like, okay, well, oops, I didn't cast or something. So you switch Disorder, and you see how Cloud kind of stays still, and then cast that arrow. So you can trigger synergy like that at a distance. So those are two different ways to do it. There's the Call to Arms I was talking about, actually. See kind of how long there's a rat appearing, and I wasn't able to target till just now. That's why we're trying to one-shot everything here ASAP. And that's why you want to make sure you target the rat with this Thundera Magnify to avoid a call to arms here. Because if you get a call to arms here, you're going to be in a really, like, annoyed state. Because you just avoided the two big ones. And then you messed up and let the other rat summon. So there you go. My fight here is kind of weird. I'm going to slash in to close the gap. Disorder is going to hit all three, the Hedgehog Pie plus the Smogger. And what that'll do is it'll actually refund me 200 ATB for each one of those hits. And what it'll end up doing is giving me full ATB. So I'll do that into self-destruct. So now I've done two things. That will trigger my ATB assist that's on Cloud, which will give 600 ATB to Aerith. Now that should flatten out Aerith's ATB so that she can Thundera Magnify in a very particular way. And it'll also trigger Arrow Synergy twice. So if you do this fight right, you will be able to just retarget the Arrow Synergy at the guy flying. You don't have to worry if you miss the retarget on the arrow. I do it. I miss it sometimes. So we'll go this, into that, into self-destruct. Bam. And then now I can retarget the arrow onto that guy. Thundera these. And then I did it a little bit too soon, but that's fine. So now these guys are active. Wait for the Thundera. And sometimes it works out perfect. I'll show you kind of like a little the fight a few more times. If you whiff the Arrow Synergy, you can just kind of do this stuff, do the work with Cloud. It is obnoxious, but it works. Practice this fight a little bit, and you should be in a pretty decent spot. So self-destruct, and you see her ATB kind of flattens out. I missed it this time. So you want to wait till these guys get in. And then we can just... You can Tempest if you want, or just do the work with Cloud, whichever. And you kind of see how these guys are still spawning. You got to be careful about casting Thundera here, because you want to wait until they're both killable. We'll show the fight off one more time. You could do this a bunch of different ways. Blade Burst is a possibility. I'd say just because what I do for this fight works for me does not mean it will work for you. So play around with the tools that you have if you have issues with getting a specific fight to work consistently, and find something that works for you. So if you have to like ATB burst and then like blade burst or some nonsense, then do it. You know? If that's what works for you, then do it. See what I mean? You can just retarget that Arrow Synergy. And there's a ton of different ways to deal with any given fight. And then now we're just gonna wait for these guys to spawn. So it's kind of just play with your tools until you find something that works. A lot of the rest of these fights, we just are trying to make our way out of here as soon as possible. There is a save load here to get her up the ladder sooner, but I've never found it consistent, so I don't do it. If save loads are banned, then don't do it, I guess. If you do, I think it saves a couple of seconds too, but it also loses you a couple of seconds. Yeah, we're just gonna ignore this guy. We just want to move on. Aerith can one-shot this at any time with Thundera, so we're just gonna let her do so whenever we get the chance. Because moving with the kids around, we can only walk. So that fight right there is made much quicker by just Thunder when we have a chance. You could disorder a few times for synergy. Your MP is not nearly tight enough to justify doing that kind of stuff. So as long as you're not like all out Thundera magnifying everything, you're fine. That fight right there, pretty easy. I make sure to lock on just to make sure my spells don't whiff. Sometimes I find spells whiff if you don't manually lock on. I'm not quite sure what causes it. I think sometimes the game will input a spell but won't have a target. And even if you fix the soft targeting or lock on, sometimes it gets kind of iffy and casts the spell like way out of bounds and does nothing. If you are having that issue, just lock on to the enemies and that'll resolve that before you start casting. So if that is popping up and your spells are just not showing up, but your MP and ATB are disappearing, that's what's happening. It took me a while to figure out what the hell was going on. So that's the end of that for most of this. This is the main part of the chapter, so I would say practice that area a lot. If Sork Storm isn't working for you, try and figure out something else to one-shot the rats. Magnified spells will not work because they hit one after another. So the rats will almost unilaterally activate Call to Arms if you try and use Magnify there. That's why we use Sork Storm. You don't have to shortcut Sorcerer Storm. You can tactical menu it because you're only really using it for those 2 fights. There are some other places you can use Sorcerer Storm. It does hit very hard. The problem is Aerith needs to be right on top of the target, and because her attacks are normally ranged and magic is ranged, it's very uncommon for her to be on top of stuff. And there is a few scenarios where putting her on top of something, like in the Broken Highway coming up in Chapter 9, you can very easily screw yourself by throwing her into one of the stun panels. The enemies pop up. So we'll throw in Rude while we're at it. It's the last big part of the chapter. There's a ton of different ways to deal with Rude, but I'll show you kind of how I do it with the self-destruct method. There's a couple of variations to this, but I do this with Ice Elemental. If you really wanted to, I'm sure you could put Wind on somebody somehow and just toggle it out real quick. I mean, Aerith does or Tifa does have it right now if you really wanted to be cute about it. I try to minimize the amount of menuing I'm doing and optimize the combat just flat around very specific setups. If you find that Wind Elemental on Cloud makes this entire chapter more consistent for you and it doesn't affect much, then go for it. I found that it wasn't really good for me. Ice Elemental just worked across the board everywhere. So I just dealt with the bad damage. So this fight's pretty straightforward. What we're going to do is we're going to attack Reno. And then as we are baiting out a counter, we're going to switch counters. So we're going to attack, switch into counter stance, and guard. I don't think you need the guard because the swap animation will usually hit you the counter. Once you counter out of that, we're going to disorder on him. ATB boost into a self-destruct. So what we're doing is we're attacking, countering to build up to 2 ATB, disorder to trigger a Synergy Wind, and then we're going to ATB boost into a self-destruct. The downside is we're not going to activate ATB assist, but the upside is we're not using ATB at all with Aerith to get through this first phase. So we can save all the ATB for the second half of the fight. Then what we're going to want to do is Aeroga at the start of the next phase, move right with Cloud, because what Aerith is going to do, the AI is really dumb and jumps forward with the Aeroga. So she'll jump forward, and if you stay where you are, she will get hit by the ground wave attack that Rude always starts the second phase with. We actually want to tank that with Cloud to level out our damage so that we get eliminated. So I'll kind of show you how this works in practice. So we're going to swing, counter, disorder, ATB boost, and self-destruct. The window isn't too tight, but you'll notice I don't have a full limit here. I'm going to Aeroga and kind of hold right here. You can get into Aeroga either way. You can menu if you really want to. But we're going to go Aeroga, guard, and input the limit. So I'm going to leave this and do it a few more times so you guys can see it. I'll do it. I'm going to do it a little slow this time again, and then I'm going to do a couple full speed ones. This is the end of the chapter, so you got to be very careful here to make sure you don't put yourself in a bad spot. But this fight isn't really that hard, so it's just attack. And if you see your counter needs to be pretty quick, so you're probably better off just sliding across to it. And then the rest of the inputs after that, you kind of have a pretty big time for. So, like, you just learn... The inputs on this are pretty tight, but not super tight in my opinion. But it may just be because I'm used to it. Into disorder, ATB boost, self-destruct, and there you go. Unless Cloud does a lot of self-damage, you're never going to get the limit yourself. But like I said, this is me trying to be a little bit slower about it. Aeroga, guard, to limit. And that limit will break his guard move, Aeroga. And you see she's casting Arrow right now. the cross slash actually activates an additional synergy, so that now that he's gotten tagged by Eriga for most of his health, she's going to follow up with another arrow, and because she has double magic up, most of the time that will kill Rude. So I'll do this one time at full speed, and you'll kind of see how it goes.
No holding back. This won't take long.
But you kind of see, like, you have a pretty big window here to get all these inputs in. Sometimes the SD doesn't do enough, and you need to hit with an additional arrow. But you're pretty good. So just, this is probably the harder phase, is just remembering to move. If you really want to, you could do it this way. Guard, and then, Eriga, and then, no, you don't want to do that. But I would say it's just better to, do it through the shortcut. But, I'll load it up one more time. That's Rude already being dead. Frame perfect. Skip for once. You can usually wait to skip until you see him get flung. I guess the only other part of this chapter is the escape. I'll kind of show you how we handle it, speedrunners in general, but you kind of make up your own method. So we're gonna swing in, counter, disorder, A to B boost as soon as we can. I'm glad it's helping out. I know that speedrunning is really niche, right? But I'm glad that everybody's learning stuff about the game. Even me, I have a lot of things to still learn. So I'm glad to hear that. Glad to hear that. Thank you. Then we just guard into a limit. Sometimes you will have high enough self damage. And be careful. Sometimes Rude will survive. Not very often, but he can survive sometimes. So I mean, you can heal yourself, but I wouldn't really bother. This isn't gonna, you know, make or break you. But glad to hear that you're enjoying it. Good to know that the content doesn't just strictly appeal to speedrunners and speedrun watchers. So here's the last little bit of the chapter. I'll show you a couple of times. There are some people that are a little gutsy that used to run and they don't anymore, if that tells you anything. Just make sure you're not holding run here. But I always make sure to get this camera angle ahead of time behind Cloud. Makes your life a lot easier. Then you can do most of your manipulations with the camera. So you don't do stuff like that. It's very easy initially. If you're still learning, fluid movement is a lot less important than kicking stuff here. If you screw up 3 times in a row, though, you will get the freebie. So kind of and take it however you want. But I'll show you. I'm glad that I'm glad that you guys are both enjoying it. I really appreciate it. So I find it easier to move with the camera, but I guess if you really wanted to, you could kick stuff 3 times in a row and get the cleaned up floor, or kick twice in a row to get the cleaned up floor. But obviously, we're not trying to do it that way. So, well, I'll show you. I gotta kind of like not talk because for whatever reason, my little brain just can't handle this at the same time as can't handle the movement. Just kind of like follow the thumbsticks and stuff. Mainly your 6th playthrough. Nice. I think I played through it 2 or 3 times. I played through hard, and then I think I started learning the speedrun almost immediately. But I probably played through this game way too many times. But kind of like, that's how most of us handle the movement, is mainly with the camera rather than the actual thumbstick. So the end of this chapter actually will come fairly shortly. This is still part of Chapter 8. So I'll separate this once Chapter 9 starts proper, and we'll throw a save down there. Maybe I'll do a tutorial for it later today, but I think that'll be it. I want to do some streaming later today and see kind of how that works out in terms of viewers. But for now, I think this is almost it. This chapter's very little combat content, mainly optimization and getting ready to switch into Aerith. There's like 3 big places where menus are pretty thick. This chapter, chapter 12, when you switch back to the main party of Cloud, Tifa, and Barrett, and then another one once you get into chapter 17 and split your party up again. Those would be your main big menus that I would suggest practicing, but that is it for chapter 7. Or chapter 8 rather. We're in chapter 9 proper now. The game is already going to put chapter 9. Oh no, you saved over your main file. Oh yeah, the PS4. Oh, 40 hours. Oh, that's rough. So hopefully this helps. I know there's a lot of time in this, but most of it is downtime. Don't need to listen to it more than once, and I hope the combat segment was thoroughly explored so that you guys can come up with kind of your own experimentation and choices. But hopefully this helps for chapter 8. Go over 9 a little bit later. Actually, I think we'll go over 9 in a minute here. So let's do that. I'll see you guys later. Peace.